Wow, there's certainly a lot of you here. So I've been introduced as the editor-in-chief of Verite News. But I thank you. But I should also say that when David Francis and I were conceptualizing what this would become, it wasn't long after that we said, you know what? Rich Webster. I have the grand privilege of working daily with Rich, with talking to him about stories every day, listening to him and his reporting techniques, and just generally being incredibly proud of being in the same room with this guy. So thank you, my friend. So Rich, Jimmy Duncan, he was convicted of murder and he was sentenced to death based on discredited and manufactured bite mark evidence. That's incredible. Tell us about Jimmy Duncan.
Sure. So in 1993, Jimmy Duncan was arrested following the death of Haley Olivo, who was his former girlfriend's 23-month-old daughter. This happened in West Monroe, which is about 4.5 hours northwest of New Orleans. So he always maintained that this was a tragic accident. So he was babysitting Haley. He put her in the bathtub upstairs. He went downstairs to wash the dishes. He heard a commotion. He ran upstairs. He found her floating in the bathtub face down. He panicked. He tried to revive her. He couldn't. He took her next door to the neighbor's house. They couldn't revive her, called 911. She later died at the hospital. The detectives went to the home. They couldn't find any evidence of wrongdoing or foul play, so they charged him with negligent homicide, which at the time carried a sentence of 5 years. So at this point, the district attorney in West Monroe, they called in these two forensic experts from Mississippi, Dr. Stephen Hain and dentist Michael West. At the time, they were sort of rising stars in the field. So they performed the autopsy on Haley, and they claimed to have found bite marks all over her body that matched a mold of Jimmy Duncan, like a mold of his teeth that had been taken during the investigation. So because of that, they said that he had raped Haley Olivo and then drowned her to cover up the crime. And because of that, they dropped negligent homicide, and they subsequently charged him with first-degree murder, which is punishable by death. 5 years later, he went to trial, jury found him guilty, and he's been in Angola prison ever since. Since his conviction, there's been a trove of evidence that's come out that has strongly pointed to Jimmy Duncan's innocence. The most important of which was a video taken of one of the autopsies performed by these pathologists. So I've watched the video, and it's horrible. You see Haley's body, it's unmarked. Then you see dentist Michael West take a mold of Jimmy Duncan's teeth, and he begins to grind it into her body. He drags it across her skin, making the bite marks that were so instrumental in his conviction. And this video was never allowed to be shown at his criminal trial. So this was evidence that was not allowed by the judge. The judge said that it was not exculpatory. The thing to know about Dr. Stephen Hain and Michael West, like this was sort of a pattern of sort of troubling behavior on their part. Since his trial, they have been thoroughly discredited. There have been accusations that they have misrepresented their credentials. They have sort of manipulated the findings of their autopsies to fit what the police wanted. They've made sort of these egregious mistakes where they mistake bug bites for human bite marks. And sort of the numbers associated with their work really tell the tale. There have been 9 prisoners convicted based in part on inaccurate evidence presented by them who were later released from prison. 7 of those cases involved this bite mark evidence. 3 of those people were sentenced to death. And there is only one person who remains on death row, and that's Jimmy Duncan.
So this project with ProPublica is a 2-year project in which we at Verite News and ProPublica are looking at how Landry's policies, Governor Landry's policies, are impacting the criminal justice system. Landry is a staunch advocate of the death penalty and has made it known that he wants to begin executing those on death row as quickly as possible. To that end, in March, Louisiana executed its first prisoner after a 15-year pause. This has made efforts to secure Duncan's release all the more urgent, right? How the hell did you come across this story?
I mean, again, like this was part of the ProPublica project, and we knew the death penalty was going to be a huge issue. Everyone who sort of works in that area, so far as the death penalty, they all pointed to Jimmy Duncan and said that this is someone who is actually innocent on death row. So far as and so now where the case stands, 2 months after we published this story, there was a state court that, as I mentioned earlier, that found him factually innocent and vacated his death sentence. They mentioned further evidence that showed that Haley, the 23-month-old girl, had suffered several head injuries prior to her drowning that likely caused a seizure, causing her to drown. There was also a jailhouse informant who later recanted his statement in which he said that Duncan admitted his guilt. The state has appealed that. They still want to execute Jimmy Duncan. And then a couple, maybe a month or so ago, his attorneys filed a motion to get him out on bail. So I went to the bail hearing in Monroe, and there was this one moment which kind of, I think, speaks to the entire sort of case where Haley's mother, she testified saying that she believes that Jimmy Duncan was innocent. She believes that this evidence against him was manufactured. And she mentioned one of the pathologists, Dr. Stephen Hain. She pointed to the prosecutor and says, "Where is Hain now?" And Hain has since passed away. The prosecutor stood up and he said, "He's in the same place that your daughter is, 6 feet underground." This was the prosecutor saying this to the mother of the child who passed away. So, and the courtroom sort of erupted, and the prosecutor had to be escorted out of the courtroom surrounded by deputies because they thought that something was going to happen to him. So right now, all of this is on appeal in front of the state Supreme Court, and Jimmy Duncan remains in Angola prison where he's been for nearly 3 decades, and there's no sort of idea when he's going to get out.
Basically, the partnership that we at Verite News are doing with ProPublica, Rich has been rolling on this story since this collaboration began, and we're proud to be able to keep track and present this sort of stuff to you. So thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
I will tell you not to cry, but I